So before we get started, I would just like to say that I have never done anything like this. I wasn't even sure how to log on to this webinar. Um, I'm not sure I know how to speak for 30 minutes uninterrupted. Um, but I'm thankful for tech-savvy teens that helped me get here. Um, uh, I should note that when I had asked my 16-year-old son to read over this talk after I had written it, and I said to him, is this going to go okay? And he was like, "Oh, yes, definitely." And he's never decisive about anything. So I was immediately interested in why. I mean, it took him a half an hour to figure out what to have for lunch today. That just to give you an idea. So I was like, "Well, why are you so decisive about this talk being successful?" And he said, basically because I make him do stuff all the time that he doesn't want to have to do. And so I was going to do this for his benefit. So teen boys, challenge accepted. So also a few days ago, I should note, it occurred to me that because this is virtual, I will have no idea if you're laughing or sleeping. And this may or may not be good. I don't know, but feel free to add emojis as you go because that will make me feel better. Um, so the reason that I was interested in giving this a shot was I've been doing this a long time, over 12 years, and I do think I have accumulated a good amount of wisdom and stuff that I could share with other parents that might be useful. I hope will be useful. And so I'm stepping way out of my comfort zone here to share that with you. So when Walter asked me to come up with a title for the talk, and I started kind of flipping through ideas in my head, I came up with "Don't Miss the Forest for the Trees," because this is a marathon. And we always kind of need to keep the long view in mind and try not to worry about what's happening day to day necessarily. And after I submitted that title and thought a little bit more, started thinking about some of those nuggets of wisdom that I had to share, I thought a better title might be sure your home is a soft place to land for your children. Because in the end, when all is said and done and the education has been imparted to your children, if you don't have the hearts of your husband and your children, um, what did you put all that effort in for? Kind of how I feel, having the hearts of your family, that's the goal, even before the being smart part. Um, and then when I got really down into the nitty gritty of what I wanted to share with you, I thought the best title should be How to Catastrophe Proof Your Homeschool and Therefore Your Family. So there you go. You have all three of my titles. Pick the one you like best, and we will move along. Okay. So another way to put this is that famous Chesterton quote about anything worth doing is worth doing badly. And I definitely agree with that sentiment. If you saw what happens in my house on a daily basis, you would see how I definitely agree with that sentiment. When it comes to homeschooling, you need to keep trucking. It is worth doing, even on the years where it seems like things are going really badly, or even if you think every year is going badly. The fact that you are thinking about your children's education at all means you're doing better than you think. You're ahead of the game. Um, and I strongly believe in accepting a good dose of chaos and a healthy helping of mediocrity, especially if you have a lot of young children in your house. Like, don't worry about the mess so much. And, like whatever, chicken nuggets and box macaroni and cheese every now and then killed nobody, hopefully, or at least so far in my house. So, don't worry about the perfection. Um, you know, when we moms are out there in the real world, for me, that's like a cross country meet or dance practices or music lessons or whatever. When you find other moms in the wild, um, I have often been asked why I homeschool, and I kind of always thought it was a really weird question because any answer I give is gonna kind of imply that they're not doing their best, kind of. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of how I felt. So one time, a mom asked me why I homeschool, and I said to her, "Well, why do you send your kids to public school?" And it became clear, like she had never been asked to defend her decision to send her kids to public school because that's just simply what you do. And, she was sent to school and her parents were sent to school, and kids hit some arbitrary age and they're shuffled off to school. And that's just what's always been done. And not giving the education of your kids a lot of thought, that's normal. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about that you're not doing well at home. Like you have put so much energy and thought into it. You are ahead of the game, I promise. Um, but homeschooling is really hard, and I'm sure you've all noticed that for so many reasons. But one of the major and constant challenges is that real life and education at home um, are intertwined and inseparable. And so, no matter how carefully you plan, life is going to come bumping into your homeschool at full speed, at ramming speed, over and over and over. There's always something that's kind of going to derail the kind of perfect vision you had of what your homeschool is going to look like. And I hear from moms all the time who had difficult school years and think that the only answer is to send their kids to school because very little learning went on. Maybe there was a health challenge or some deep family challenge, or I mean, there's so many different things that, will end in them thinking that this is their only option. Um, and so they make the difficult decision to send their kid to school, and invariably, things really don't improve after that decision. Either the child is kind of lost in the swamp of wokeism that they've learned there, or they're miserable at school, and so they take them out of school and then wind up having to re-enroll them, and then they're in this like cycle of educational misery. And any problems that your child is having at home will not be improved by sending them to school. And most likely, it will just add a whole host of other problems. So, if you're having a discipline problem with a child or all of your children, or a relationship problem with your child or with all of your children, sending them to school is not going to solve that problem. And it could make it a lot worse. Um, so the home, it's just really the best place for the family with the culture how it is right now. So anyway, I want to tell you that you can do this. You can homeschool in the face of major challenges. You can continue homeschooling. You will get through it. They will get through it, and you'll do it together, and it's possible. So I'm not going to tell you this for sympathy or attention, but just an idea of how life has over and over collided with my dreamy school plans. My husband finds this is hilarious in a if you don't laugh, you'll cry sort of way. So since we started homeschooling, we have had three difficult pregnancies, four miscarriages, one stillbirth, one cancer diagnosis, one parathyroid needing to be removed, a child with an annular pancreas requiring major abdominal surgery, a feeding tube, month-long inpatient feeding therapy program, gastroparesis, serious food allergies, asthma, alopecia, amblyopia, three children with growth hormone deficiency, adrenal insufficiency, dysphagia, second child with feeding tube because why have one when you can have two, and receptive expressive language delays. And I only have five kids, so it's been nuts. And the list can go on and on. And with all those things comes like the research hours you need to put in and doctor's appointments and phone calls. I am an expert at dealing with insurance if anybody needs advice. Um, I always joke I'm not a doctor, but I play one on the internet. So if anybody needs medical advice after my homeschooling advice, feel free. So you can imagine over the years, we have had good school years and we have had bad school years and we have had truly catastrophic school years. And what I really want to impart to you is something profound, and that is it doesn't matter. In the scheme of things, it has made no difference educationally for my kids. It's a blip. It made absolutely no difference that my son never finished his fifth grade math. He's a high school junior now, just finished calculus. It made no difference that my fourth child wasn't reading solidly until she was 8. It made no difference that my 9-year-old didn't have her multiplication tables memorized. And by the way, I mentioned that to her when I was writing this, and she's 12 now, and she informed me she still doesn't have them memorized, and it still doesn't matter. Clearly, because she's doing well in math. So as far as I know, it's all fine. I am currently telling myself that it doesn't matter that my 6-year-old can barely count to 10. Um, in the moment where these things are happening, it seems earth shattering, but with the entire forest in view, it is blip. Um, and let me share with you a little bit about my youngest child. This is our catastrophic school year. 6 years ago, I had my youngest child. Her name is Teresa. She was named for Teresa Benedicta of the Cross, or Saint Edith Stein. I'm a Jewish convert, so one of my favorites. She came after two miscarriages and a stillbirth, and it had been 4 years since my next youngest. She was born right after Thanksgiving, 2 weeks early, after a complicated third trimester and an emergency C-section. And I don't know about you other moms, but I always find that however my baby behaves in utero and during labor and delivery really is like a hint into what their personality will be like. Um, so my first pregnancy was my only son, and he's kind of always just been easy and steady and calm. And his labor and delivery was easy and steady and calm. My second pregnancy was a wild ride that I wondered if I was even going to make it through it. Um, and my second child was my only child born screaming. And she has been spicy and fierce her entire life with wild red curly hair. So just an idea. So anyway, Teresa, she was born also after a difficult pregnancy, showed up early, came, you know, exploding into the world practically. Um, so just, that's just an intro into what her life has been like. She seemed healthy when she was born. We, stayed in the hospital a few days, were sent home. But by about a month old, she was suffering with chronic respiratory issues, and we were admitted at our local hospital. She was requiring oxygen. And we were there for a couple of weeks. She would get better. We would be sent home. A couple of weeks later, same thing. We were admitted again. She would need oxygen. And by the second time we were admitted, she was also not really gaining weight. Um, and, we were there for another couple of weeks and then we were discharged. In the meantime, I had made some appointments with her at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which, if you heard the litany earlier, you can imagine that there's already like halls and wings of the hospital named after us. So, yeah, we are very familiar there. So we had made appointments with her with pulmonologist and a GI. And as we waited for those appointments, her health was clearly deteriorating. She was eating less and less and crying more and more. And so, long story short, the doctors had ordered a slew of tests, and one of them was a swallow study, which is a fascinating test. They drink barium, and there's an X-ray going, and you could see exactly what's happening in their mouth and their throat as they swallow. And what they discovered is that every time she swallowed formula, she was aspirating it into her lungs. So she was immediately admitted to the hospital there for more testing and to start a feeding tube because she was no longer able to safely eat by mouth. And she needed her weight stabilized. So we were there for a few weeks. And not to bore you with even more details about her life, the next 2 years were basically consumed with hospital stays and appointments at the Children's Hospital, which is about 2 years away from home. So as you can imagine, this was our most catastrophic school year. So I want to focus on how to get through catastrophic years with your family intact. Um, People saying, poor baby, she is 6 now and totally healthy, and you'd have no idea. So thank God. But yeah, it was a crazy ride with her. So how to get through with your family intact, with your homeschool intact. Um, there are ways to make it work. You do not need to give up. Yes, CHOP is amazing. Sending your kids off to school doesn't need to be the answer. So first, some ideas on the homeschooling end of things, so that if the poop hits the fan, you could feel confident that at least something is going on educationally at home. And then I'll talk more about the nitty gritty of keeping your family close knit and loving and ensuring that your home is a safe place for them to land, no matter what is going on outside of the home. So, especially in the earliest years of schooling your kids, teach them to work independently. Teach them to read directions, read through their lessons, to work on what they're able to do on their own, and to work steadily, and then come to you with any problems. You can go over the lesson with them. That way, they learn to work steadily, and if they know how to learn and they know how to follow directions, you can at least get some schoolwork done without you needing to be there to hold their hands all the time. In my experience, by the time a child is in fifth or sixth grade, they should be able to work through their assignments independently for the most part. Obvious questions come up or problems come up, and that they'll need help. But for the most part, they're able to work through the bulk of their assignments on their own. And be disciplined, especially in the early days. School time is not the time for negotiations or to be soft. Like that's the time to, be serious. Be soft the rest of the day. Um, they do the work assigned. End of story. And let me tell you, I was super strict, especially with my first two. And I remember a marathon timeout for a certain young man who didn't want to recite some work that he was assigned. And obviously you discipline however your family chooses, but we only had that issue once. There was one time out where he didn't do what was assigned, and it never happened again. And so the two oldest really set the standard. The younger ones do what the older ones do. They do what they see. And so no one was fussing about assignments. And so it continues that no one is fussing about assignments. It's just kind of what we have set up. And so there's little fussing going on. And I am not saying we have a perfect or peaceful homeschool at all moments. We do not. And I'll talk about that more later. But generally speaking, they all do what they need to do because that is what we have always done. So consistency is really important, especially in the early years. Um, Super important. I feel like keep your curriculum simple in the elementary grades. You don't need to do anything but reading, writing, and math for the first several years. We don't do any history until like fourth or fifth grade, and we don't do any science until like high school. And what I mean by that is I don't purchase curriculum and there are no assignments in those classes. And I came to the decision because I went to school in the 80s. I don't know if anybody else experienced this, but we didn't have science until I was in junior high. Um, and history, we kind of did like local history and some simple American history, but we didn't like delve into world history or European history or medieval history. None of that was covered at all. And so starting history and science later, especially history, it still gives you plenty of time to kind of cycle through at least two times through all the areas that will be important. Um, and so my recommendations for elementary science and history is let your kids watch Wild Kratts on Magic School Bus, and they will know more than plenty uh, in those areas. I can promise you they will have encyclopedic knowledge of animals and dinosaurs and whatever else. I also recommend, I find people don't know as much about the show Octonauts, also really great. And Dinosaur Train. If you want to get your kids out of your hair for a few hours one day, challenge them to memorize the Dinosaur A to Z song from Dinosaur Train. I'm sure you could find it on YouTube if you have never seen the show or can't get streaming or whatever. Look it up on YouTube, Dinosaur A to Z song. There is a dinosaur for every letter of the alphabet. You may be surprised to hear. And see if you can get them to memorize it. This will take them a few hours, probably, or at least that's what it did for my kids. And to this day, my 16-year-old and my 14-year-old still willing to sing the song for me in exchange for a couple of M&Ms. And definitely record them singing it. You will want that for posterity or bribery, whichever works for you in the future. So there's your history. Your science, sorry. For history, grab Phil Campbell's Story of Civilization CDs, or if not the CDs, I know I'm an old lady, so we have CDs, whatever, like files, how they, you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you know what I mean. Um, I have never met a kid that didn't love the CDs of Story of Civilization. It's like the Beatles. They go nuts. I don't know what magic he put in there, but they will know again more than enough history just listening to those CDs. And it covers ancient history, medieval history, modern history, and American history. And boom, you're done. Throw in a few viewings of Liberty Kids, and your kids are set for science and history through at least sixth grade, if not longer. And your homeschool is catastrophe proofed right there. Um, Keeping it simple is what will hold it all together. If some emergency comes up in your family, if your 9-year-old really only needs to do some reading and a page of math and some handwriting, you can trust that they could get that much done without you being there or with you being there minimally. And they can just do the next thing for however many days you need them to. The next page, just keep moving. And then if they get their work done, they're rewarded at the end with a few episodes of Magic School Bus, and everybody feels like they won. Encourage your older kids to help your younger kids. My son is a master at Latin and math. And so everybody goes to him with the Latin and math questions. My oldest daughter is the grammar genius. So everybody goes to her with the grammar questions. And that helps a lot. And encourage them for their expertise and their help, because then they'll not mind doing it as much. Also, I really recommend memorizing poetry with your kids. I highly recommend the Mother of Divine Grace poetry lists for each grade. I'm pretty sure you can get them on the website without having to buy the syllabus or anything like that. I'm pretty sure. If not, they're probably, if you Google it, you could probably find them somewhere. But they give a list of poems for each grade that's like appropriate for that age. And do it for all the good brain reasons. Memorizing is good for them and they're sponges and all that. But the reason I really recommend it is because it creates a family culture. They all have memorized The Owl and the Pussycat. It is a rite of passage. We can all quote The Owl and the Pussycat and make jokes from it, and we recognize references to it. Charge of the Light Brigade, Half a League, Half a League, Half a League Onward. That's another favorite one that they've all gone through and love. And this is sort of the other side of the coin that I want to talk about, to catastrophe proof your family. Your family culture is so important. Your shared experiences, good and bad, and your ability to have fun together, to laugh together, to get through hard times together. When I started thinking about this talk, I'd asked my kids why they thought we had a close family. And my oldest daughter said she thinks it's because of the hard times that we have all gone through together. And I think she's right about that in large part. So, just a few ideas of what has worked for us to stick it out together through thick and thin. So, my first recommendation is I know I just told you to watch a lot of Wildcrats, but keep the TV to a minimum, and limit it to just a few shows that are kind of family approved, um, that are going to be good and edifying. No channel flipping, no TV without asking, and keep computers out as long as possible. And this comes from a mom who just bought her teen son his first laptop. But there was a real mourning in that for us, legitimately, because computer time has always been a communal time for us. So this was born out of, not wanting our kids to get in trouble online. They're not allowed to surf the internet. They're not allowed to be on Google or YouTube unsupervised. So any rabbit holes that my kids were going down, we were falling down those rabbit holes together. Um, and I can tell you, I know more about My Little Pony cutie marks than any person needs or wants to know. If you don't know what that is, every My Little Pony has a little logo on their hip, and they all have different meanings. And I know an awful lot about My Little Pony cutie marks. More than one Saturday morning has been spent in that research. Um, your kids do not need social media, and your kids do not need cell phones, or tablets or anything with flashing lights. So my two high school kids, they play sports at our local high school, and they are the only two kids without their own phone, which actually works out really well because if they need to call me, everybody has a phone available for them to borrow. And so they've never had a problem. They'll ask another kid or the coach or whoever, if they could borrow their phone. There's a girl on their cross country team who texts me regularly during cross country season to make sure that I'm up to date, with everything. She's like the little mother hen on the team. So I mean, it's all fine. It'll work out without a phone. And this, I don't have any kids who are driving yet. That all changes. I feel like once they're driving, that's a different story though. Um, I say no phones and to really cut back on technology, not because they're bad in themselves. I am quite attached to my laptop. I really enjoy Instagram, I'll be honest. But because if you want your family to remain close, these things can be a huge distraction. And a major way that you can, well, just kind of withdraw to your own corners with whatever technology or flashing lights you choose. So mom's over here and dad's over there, and she's got a tablet over there and a phone over there. And without those things constantly in the home, you are forced to come together. When the world is bumping up against you everywhere, make your home a sanctuary. When there is something weighing on your child's heart, make sure you're the one available to unload it and not some stranger in some online forum. Because if it isn't you, trust me, there are at least 100 creepy men on the internet who would happily listen to them instead. And you could imagine the problems that can come from that. So make sure you're available and that you're not all, just withdrawn to your corners with whatever technology you choose. I mentioned earlier, our life in the last decade or so has been really hard at times, but we 1000% buy into the saying, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. So make sure your family laughs together. Don't be afraid to be silly. Don't be afraid to embrace your children's weird quirks, and we know they all have them. Um, don't make light of them, but teach them not to take themselves too seriously, to make the joke first. When my son was about 10 years old, he developed alopecia. And if you don't know what that is, it's like he had these huge bald spots on his hair. He lost big patches of hair, one of which was like right down the middle of his head. He looked ridiculous, like he had just shaved stripe down his head. Um, and he has beautiful, thick red hair. Um, we had taught him, from the beginning, not to take himself too seriously and to be able to laugh at the ridiculous circumstances we're put in sometimes. And we had no control over it anyway. So, we laughed about it, I'll be honest. And, but it made him kind of teasing proof. No kid said anything, like it didn't make any difference to him. Thankfully, the hair is all grown back and he hasn't had another flare and his beautiful red locks are back. Um, just another silly family culture thing. My 14-year-old daughter said, "Tell them about Fat Squirrel," which is her nickname in the family. And she is very long and thin and willowy, not at all fat, and also not a squirrel, as you can imagine. So, why that's her nickname, we can't remember exactly why, but mostly because it was hilarious and it kind of just stuck. So, she's the fat squirrel. Um, be able to laugh at your own foibles and own them. Like own them. If you know that you are cranky in the morning, own it. Own it, laugh at it, like just know what your weaknesses are. Don't be afraid to admit your weaknesses to your children and always ask them to pray for you. Make traditions. And as Catholics, the church has made this super easy. Pick a handful of feast days and celebrate. Just a few ideas from our arsenal. We always have devil's food cake cupcakes for St. Michael's feast day. Sometimes the kids take toy swords and stab their cupcakes. That is not required, though. Um, we always put up a big nativity scene that takes up like a whole wall of our family room on the first Sunday of Advent. We celebrate St. Lucy's Day and St. Nicholas Day and all the major Marian feast days. One of my personal favorites is for the Feast of the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin. We always get Chinese takeout because, as Walter had said, I'm a Jewish convert from New York. And so, as a good Jewish mom from New York, I know that what Mary, also a good Jewish mom, wants for her birthday is Chinese food. And so we just went with that, and that has become the tradition now that that's how we celebrate Mary's birthday. We take our Christmas card photo in the same place every year, and that's at Cabela's, which is an experience if you've never been there. But we stop there every year on our way to visit my dad in Virginia, and they sit on the rocks in front of the fish pond, and I have pictures of my kids sitting on those rocks in front of the pond for like 10 years, seeing the progression of how they age. It's amazing. Um, and then we also at Cabela's always buy those weird candy circus peanuts. Again, another tradition that I have absolutely no recollection of how it started, but there you go, circus peanuts on the way to Virginia. First day of school, we always have cinnamon buns from a can, and I think the world would come to an end if we didn't. We have special like rite of passage books that we all read. A series of unfortunate events is one of them. That's a family favorite. My current 10-year-old is reading them now, and loving it. Another one is Swallows and Amazons that we love. Um, series of unfortunate events is it's a funny story. Back in a past life, I was a school teacher. I taught instrumental music, which is a fancy way of saying that I was a band teacher. And I had this student named Rachel. She was in fifth grade. She played the clarinet and she was hilarious and I adored her. And every week she would come into class, into her lesson, and tell me about what she was reading in a series of unfortunate events. And she was always just so excited about it that I just kind of had stored it away in my head that when I have kids old enough to read it, we're going to read it. And Rachel was right. They're awesome. They're hilarious. They're unfortunate. Um, and I was able to track her down a couple of years ago to tell her that she was right, and that it was really nice to get to tell her that, however many years in the future. So to sum up, simplify your homeschool and just keep doing the next thing. Don't stress the small stuff. Don't miss the forest for the trees, especially in the younger grades. So if things come up, everyone knows what they need to do. But most importantly, make your home a soft place to land for your children. Make sure you know their hearts. Create a strong family culture because that is the glue that will bind you together. That is what will hold you together when everything else is falling apart. Um, I know that I've not spoken that much about the faith, but there's a lot of resources out there Catholic faith. There's speakers coming up who can cover that way better than I do. But make no mistake, the faith is super important in our life. It is the center of our lives. We love celebrating the liturgical year at home. And I think attaching those memorable and fun small observances in your home is integral to raising faithful children and protect their innocence at all costs. And I cannot repeat that enough. Protect their innocence at all costs, whatever it takes. Teach them to memorize the Baltimore Catechism, surround them with the good and the beautiful, ask them to pray for you. I have always found that nothing is as effective as the prayers of children. Probe deeply into their spiritual questions and interests and surround them with good liturgy, good priests, and good friends, and love them fiercely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was great.
Thank
Round of
you.
applause for Jamie, everybody. That was wonderful. All right. And we had some, so you were wondering whether or not people would like it or not, or other reactions and whatnot, but you can clearly tell that that is not, that many people did enjoy that. And
Okay.
I'll just, to add more substance to the sizzle there, Amy says, your talk is the best. I can relate in so many levels with education and curriculum and who you become as a parent. This homeschool life is doable and the best thing a family will ever do together. Best advice I've learned, don't compare yourself to other homeschool
Yes.
families. Yeah.
Don't compare yourself. The thief of
Yeah, so
joy.
you can tell you can see the accolades coming in. There are a lot of people that appreciated what you had to say. So
Thank you.
and Aaron says this is exact what most people need mid-year as a refresh, this mindset and advice. So this is great. So we do have a couple of questions that did come in. And by the way, feel free to keep your questions coming in, guys. We're doing great on time. So one question came in from Jennifer. What do you use for your kids starting ninth grade history and science?
Homeschool connections. For history.
Hey, I like that answer.
Not for history. Sorry. Oh no, wait, my ninth, I have a ninth grader and she is using homeschool connections for ninth, for history and for science. So she is doing American history with Jalbert. What's
Chuck
his first name?
Chalbert. Chuck
Yes.
Chalbert, yeah.
Yes, and she's getting a lot out of it. It's a challenging class. And for science, she's doing Macbeth Durham, who is a legend in the science homeschool science world. She is, she's like the Phil Campbell of the science wing, I feel. So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
she absolutely loves that. And yeah, keep it simple in the elementary years and then use homeschool connections for everything else. It's basically been what we have done. So, and I highly recommend it. And we use like for history, she's doing it recorded with just recorded. She's not doing instructor access for that. Science, she is doing live with whoever just mentioned Kathy Dutton. She is amazing. Also, my son took chemistry
Yeah.
with her. Highly recommend that as a live class with a lab. She was amazing for me. Like I would email her with questions. She's amazing. So
And by the
yes,
way, that question was not a paid question. That was
not a
just so
paid
you
advertisement. No
but
kickback.
just for the record, because you could have said something else, and that would have been okay
Right.
too. So, yeah. So that's a great question, great answer actually. And
Thank you.
Janine asked, "I'd love to hear more about Liberty Kids. What have tell us more about that."
Okay, so I don't know where like it must have been on PBS originally a long
Hmm.
time ago. I'm not even sure. Um,
Yeah.
Somebody told me about it when we were, starting homeschooling, and we have it on DVD because we are technically challenged. We still have VHS and DVD here, but I'm sure you can like buy it or find it on YouTube or something. But yeah, we own the DVDs, and it's American History series. It goes through the American Revolution, I think is all right. Yeah, just the American
Hmm.
Revolution. It's interesting. Aaron Carter sings the theme song, and that's also interesting. But it's really good, really well done. My kids have watched it several times. Um, an excellent second to Phil Campbell. Nothing beats Phil Campbell CDs for Story of Civilization, though. As I said, he's like the
Yeah.
Beatles.
The Beatles, yes. And he's talking right after you, as a matter
Yes,
of fact.
yeah.
So,
So stick
yeah.
around. Yeah.
So you'll hear him. He may sing a tune. Who knows? Yeah, we use Liberty Kids as well, and we love it.
Yep.
It teaches the kids a ton. It really does. It's really neat. So great. Your family sounds so. This isn't from anonymous. Your family sounds so similar to ours, right down to the technology decisions, poverty,
Mhm.
memorization, and even child hair loss. However, we're struggling mightily with ADHD issues. No amount of structured therapeutic work is helping my oldest, who is 14, to see his choices are self-defeating. Medication is not an option due to other health issues. He is a smart kid, but we're drowning right now, and he is not a high school, and he's not high school ready. Some of the others, some of the others are taking their cues from his lack of effort. Do you have any ideas? Anything? And I would invite the audience too to answer
Yes.
Anonymous's question too, because you
Yeah.
may have
Because
something. You may have something else to
yeah,
offer.
I almost wanted to say at the beginning, I don't have any kids with autism. I don't have any kids with ADHD. So that does make a difference. Um, but I think the discipline, I mean, it may not be ADHD as much as teen boy syndrome because I have a teen boy who had a lot of similar problems last year. And he was, I mean, he's sitting right here. But got in a lot of trouble and he had everything taken away, like everything. He couldn't even have hot drinks. Like he was basically like everything was like all he could do was school, breathe, shower, and eat. That was it. That's all he had until he fixed the problem. So whatever way that you discipline your kids, um, don't don't be afraid to discipline. It's not going to make them hate you. They kind of want the walls. Um, they want parameters, you know? So he wound up finishing the school year with all A's and thanking me at the end because he wound up having to work really hard and getting it done. And obviously, your son has other issues at play, and I really don't have any experience, but discipline is discipline. Um, and give him the tools that he needs to learn how to get organized. That helped my son a lot. Um, and just take away the distraction as much as you can, like whatever it is and whatever his currency is. um and that's the best advice I could give.
Yeah, we did a and we I will tell you that um we did what we call Sharper Minds. Now it's here in Texas, and it's a gentleman that does it locally. His name's Ed. Sharper Minds. If it's a it's what's really fascinating about it is it really teaches the kids, especially who have dyslexia or tendencies towards dyslexia, how to read. It's amazing, but it's about it takes a long time to go through, but it's daily exercises that are mental, physical, balance, everything. It's amazing because you're training your brain, both sides of your brain to do the same thing basically. Instead of a right brain and a left brain, you have a one brain. Anyway, it's very good. It's very and it's taught my kids to read. The two that went through it at they normal reading is about 100 words a minute, maybe 150. My kid was reading at 1,500 words a minute at one point. It's
Wow.
insane. It's and so now I'm not saying he does that like he could digest it all, but he could go through all of it very quickly, and it's helped his ability through dyslexia because he had a little bit of dyslexia, and his ADHD has helped too. So it's a phenomenal program if you can do it.
I just want
Um,
to add lots of exercise, like run and stack wood and chop wood, whatever it is, dig a hole. I don't know, like he
yeah,
runs long distance. That is super helpful for focusing. But they got to move their bodies.
yeah, yeah, agreed. So there are some other there's a lot of questions and comments coming in. Do you have any book recommendations? I'm going to kind of condense these a little bit. So you have book recommendations for voracious kiddos. Can't keep them.
Oh,
We have a few blog
yes.
articles on that too on the Homeschool Connection site. That would be great, I
Yes, I
think,
have
for that.
heaps of I thought you meant like parenting books, and I was going to say don't read parenting books. That's my recommendation. But yeah, for kids books, Belisarius series, which is by Arcs Publishing, right here.
Mm,
Uh, what else? Anything by Roald Dahl. Um, of course I'm going blank because I'm so nervous, but like email me and I can send them a list. And I mean depends on their ages. The Little House series, the Betsy Casey series, Narnia. We may be the only Catholic homeschool family that does not love Lord of the Rings. I don't know if that means that we get kicked out right now. Like all of that is null and void.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean just lots of good literature. There's heaps of good reading lists.
Yeah.
Um, there's a hundred good book or a thousand good books. Uh, John Senior put out.
Yeah, and I
Some
know that Sarah McKenzie has some stuff out there too that she has
Yes,
on the
yes,
reading list.
yes.
So that's
Yes.
another
Oh,
consideration too.
Green Ember, Red Wall, those are
Love it.
another two big ones.
Redwall. Yep. Yep. Ryan Jacks, I think is his name, or
Yep, Brian
Jock.
Jock.
Yeah, very good. Green Ember, that's by Smith. Something
JD,
Smith.
JD Smith, I think.
Yeah,
SD Smith.
yes. Excellent, excellent book. My kids love it. That's a whole series. Love it.
Yep.
All right, so another question came in. Do you prefer from Mrs. Shaho, do you prefer live or recorded courses?
Totally depends. Once I get into high school, I really try to start focusing on what they think they might want to do after high school and what their kind of core interests are. So, like my son wants to go into engineering, so he's done his science and math live. Everything else is recorded. So he does religion recorded, he does history recorded, he does writing recorded, but with teacher access, instructor access. Um, so it just depends. My daughter is interested in classics and science, so she's taking Latin and science live and everything else recorded. We have a limited budget, so we kind of really pick and choose. It is really fantastic though, the instructor access thing, because you're basically getting the class, they're watching the recording and everything, but then you have access to the teacher, they're checking their work, giving recommendations. So if you have a limited budget, I highly recommend using instructor access where you can.
Yeah, great. And so Aaron Ray asks, my biggest challenge is smart 10-year-old fourth grader who is dyslexic and struggles massively with all things academic, but she's mature and bright and hates babyish things, but
Right.
can't do any school independently. Do any of yours have learning disabilities? And I think you already answered some of that already.
Yeah,
So.
not, I mean, my youngest, the 6-year-old, she was actually she has receptive expressive language delay, and she was just diagnosed with auditory processing issues. But she's like not even started school, so I have very little experience in there. But I mean, I do have kids that have areas of challenge, definitely. So I mean, for math, I had one child that I moved to teaching textbooks because I mean, we use Saxon for math,
Mhm.
and it was just a real struggle for her, and it was making her miserable and hate school. And we switched her to teaching textbooks, and I feel like it totally changed her whole outlook on school, where now she kind of sits down and gets it done, and is doing really well. There's no struggle at all. So don't be afraid to adjust what you do for that one child. I try to stick to the same thing for ease and to catastrophe proof my home. Like that's why we all
Yeah.
use Saxon. But if it's making that child utterly miserable and it's ruining school, like you don't want them to hate learning and you don't want them to hate school. So and like just don't sweat some of the stuff either. Like I had kids that had struggled with like memorizing state capitals or memorizing things in general. Like don't do it then. Like you could, set up some challenge for them when they're 12 and it wouldn't be as hard. In one afternoon, they could probably memorize all 50 states and capitals and get a cupcake as reward or something. And they're, like, so you're stressing out when they're 7 and unable to memorize it. Just let it go for now. They could probably, lead a full adult life without knowing all their state capitals.
Yeah, I
I hope,
mean,
like,
yeah.
but yeah, I know. I don't get like stuck in the weeds. Just get the core stuff done that you can't get through life without math and reading. So
I mean,
focus on that.
what's the essence of learning? It's really to teaching how to think, right? Critically.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
They will learn on their own. I mean, let's
Yep.
face it, school does not end, learning does not end when we decide to hang up our gown and cap, right? That doesn't happen. In fact, most people would say the things that they learn now, the things that they know now are probably from books that they read a week ago or 2 weeks ago
100%.
or five, you
Yes.
know what I mean? So
Yep.
it's oh golly, there's a lot of good questions coming in, and I'm doing my best to get through them. We only have 7 minutes, give or take, before we get into Philip. So, and I know he's here. So,
Yeah. I saw him say
let's see
hello.
what we can do to bang out some more here. My eldest, 18 years old and still living at home, has really started to buckle our family time and traditions and push away from us by never being home and staying in her room when she is home. Is there any way I can pull her back in? I do understand it is all part of growing up, but it is breaking my heart.
Yeah. My oldest is 16, and I'm gonna tell myself that will never happen because yeah, I can't. That would be heartbreaking. I feel like I'm saying this now as a mom who doesn't have an 18-year-old in that situation, but we tend to be strict. I tell my kids that I wrote a book called The Mean Mom's Handbook, and that's like a family joke that I'm the meanest mom. Um, So, I mean, in my head, what I'm thinking I would do is, you follow the family rules and you do what the family does, or you move out, and that's kind of it. But like, you got to know what's in their heart, have a heart to heart with them, like why are they behaving that way, um, and just a lot of prayer.
Yeah, I don't think there's an
No,
easy answer
Julianne,
to this.
I'm the meanest mom.
Yeah, yeah. Y'all can do fisticuffs later on about it,
Right.
and that'll be the post conference experience. So if y'all
That's
want to
right.
stick around, you're gonna see
Big
Julianne
fight.
and Jamie. Go ahead. Yeah, there's no easy answers for that one, I don't think. But I
Yeah.
think one of the things that's so key
I
is
can say that,
relationship. And
sometimes you could do everything and your
yeah,
kid's going to stray. That happens. Not, like, they have free will, unfortunately.
yeah,
Um, and so other than prayer and doing your best to keep open relationship with them, you
yeah.
might have to ask her to move out.
Yeah, that's good answer. Yeah. Let's do one more question, and I think we're gonna have to break it. And then if I don't know how to, maybe what we could do is from the other questions that I've seen come in, we can we can kind of archive them and see if we can get responses to you guys. If you're interested, just let us know.
Yes, definitely.
Sorry we're not able to get there. I didn't anticipate this many questions. It's so good,
Yeah.
but
No, I'm
all right.
glad.
MV is asking, my sixth grader is starting Homeschool Connections this semester. How many classes do you recommend for her to start with, and which subjects? That's a pretty big conversation.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a huge
and
conversation.
I would say maybe Jamie, just so you know, call us. Call us because we have our staff, and some of them are here, as a matter of fact, that are they're happy to answer that question. As a matter of fact, so you call the 800 number, and we can certainly do our best to answer it. So for sure, yeah.
And just my 2 cents,
Yeah,
keep the computer time,
please.
especially for a sixth grader, to a minimum. I would say 1 or 2 classes at
Yeah,
that age.
I agree. In fact, we advocate for, even though we're an online program, we are not advocating. We do not really advocate for 8 hours a day in front of the computer. In
Yeah.
fact, maybe 1 or 2 classes. We some people use this more and they love it. Don't get me wrong, but we ourselves are advocates of what you're espousing. So just kind of give an FYI on that.
Yeah. Especially
All right, we'll
that's
get one
that's
more
really
question and
young
we'll
to
turn it
kind
over
of
to.
put them there.
So Carrie asked, well, last question. I'm 100% newbie, starting a homeschooling journey next fall after 6 years at Catholic elementary school, grades 5, 3, and kindergarten, along with a 12-year-old son with Down syndrome. If you look back at the beginning, what is the one thing you wish you had done differently? Great question.
Just not sweated the small stuff, really. I would say discipline is super, especially at the beginning, especially if they're coming out of school, they're used to something already. Just be ready for some pushback. Um, and yeah, I think just like not worrying about all the little bits and pieces that I worried about with my first two, like whether or not they have their state's capitals memorized in first grade or not, as Mother Divine Grace recommends. Wasn't happening here. But anyway, yeah, that's what I worry about. Just make worry about the reading, the writing, and the math.
And I think that's a great way to end it because that's basically a big summary of what you said. And there are a lot of other questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to every one of them, guys.
Eh,
If you want to reach out to us at homeschoolconnections.com, I'm sorry, homeschoolconnections at gmail.com. You can reach out to us and we'll be happy to get your answers to us or to you.
yes.
We'll send them on to Jamie and then kind of be the intermediary.
Yeah.
But I'm by the way, thank you all for chiming in on the answers because we're a community and it's great to see that kind of communal experience and y'all helping one another out. That's great. All
Yes.
right, Jamie,
Thank
wonderful.
you
You
so
did
much for
great.
all the feedback, guys. Thank you for the hearts and the cheers and whatever you sent up. That really helped. Thank you.